As with many of the communities whose origins started in the 19th century, the settlement known as Pembroke owes its roots to the logging industry. In its infancy, Pembroke was a logging epicenter in the Ottawa Valley. Attracted by magnificent forests of virgin pine, loggers were hired from all over to help bring this vital commodity to larger economic centers. But with the influx of people to this new area came the arrival of crime, booze, and disease. One family soon found this out all too well, as a simple act of charity quickly turned into tragedy. Simon and Louisa Chesrowski were a simple German couple, and like many new residents to the area, took advantage of the many free land grants that were being given away at the time. They settled in a quaint log home 9 miles outside the newly formed community of Pembroke. Family was very important to the Chesrowskis, as with every settler of German descent. Often Simon and Louisa could be seen playing with their children or reading passages from the Bible as a family. And as with most people of Catholic faith, Christmas was a very special time. But it was the Christmas season of 1891 that the Chesrowskis would never forget. That particular holiday season started out like any other. Christmas morning, the children awoke to find they each had a present under the tree. Simon and Louisa were the proud parents of 4 beautiful children: Anthony, Andrew, Mary Louise, and the eldest, John Christopher. It was a very happy time for the young children, and they played well into the afternoon with their new toys. Later that day, Simon went into town to gather some supplies for the days ahead. The entire family met him at the door to wish him off. It was while he was in town that Simon met a neighbor, John Cutshaw, who was down from one of the lumber camps. Joe was very ill and was doubling over in obvious pain. Simon, feeling very bad for his friend, wanted to do what he could to help. He invited young Cutshaw to his home to help nurse him back to health. Upon arriving back at the Chesrowski home, Simon and Louisa quickly brought Joe Cutshaw to a bed. He was fevering and faint, but Louisa stayed by him that whole first night. Next few days, Joe stayed with the Chesrowskis, slowly gaining his strength as the symptoms of his illness began to subside. Soon, Joe was able to get back on his feet. Very grateful for their charity and hospitality, Joe thanked Simon and Louisa and left to return to work at the lumber camp. Shortly after Joe Cutshaw's departure, the children began to develop symptoms of illness. Louisa noticed that John Christopher was quickly developing a fever. His clammy skin was feverish to the touch, and he was becoming more and more exhausted as the day wore on. Simon and Louisa soon brought the boy to bed in hopes that the rest that cured Joe Cutshaw would do the same for their eldest son. Within a few hours, all the children had developed the same symptoms. It would seem that whatever had afflicted their neighbor had now attacked their family. Children lay everywhere, blankets covering them for warmth, as Mrs. Chesrowski rushed to attend to each as quickly as she could. It was on New Year's Eve that Simon had gone to check on John Christopher, only to find he had passed away in the night. He was grief-stricken. The family had suffered a terrible loss, but Simon would not be taken by sorrow. He knew what must be done. He traveled into town and purchased a coffin to bury his beloved son. It was on his return trip he was stopped by a neighbor with horrible news. His other 3 children had succumbed to the illness in his absence. Simon dropped to his knees in utter despair. He had lost all that was dear to him. Not knowing how to cope, Simon simply climbed from his knees, turned around, and headed back into Pembroke to pick up the coffins for his other children. Today, the Chuzrowski home sits on the grounds of the Champlain Trail Museum in Pembroke. Visitors from miles around come to catch a glimpse of what life was like in a simpler time. But some of those see more than they expect. Of all the artifacts in the Chuzrowski home, only a few are from the original house. One of these is the Chuzrowski family clock. The clock no longer works, but it is a constant reminder of the Chuzrowski family. One day, a worker brought a tourist into the home. Upon their entry into the room the clock was in, it began to come to life, ticking loudly as its pendulum swung quickly back and forth. The guide, so startled by the sudden starting of the once-dead clock, grabbed her tourist by the arm and quickly escorted him to the door and out of the home. Another incident tells of a worker doing the rounds throughout the home. The worker walked through the lower part of the house, checking to see if all was as it should be. She was only in the home for a short time when she heard footsteps from upstairs. Curious, she made her way to the stairs to see who was up there. As she got to the bottom of the stairs, she looked up and saw a young girl looking back at her. She called to the child, but got no answer. The child just stared at her. As she began to climb the stairs, the child quickly darted away and into the Chuzrowski's children's room. A little startled, but not discouraged, the worker climbed to the top of the stairs to ask how the child got into the house without supervision. Upon entering the room, the worker found that there was no one there. The child had simply vanished into thin air. As the worker scanned the room, she noticed the toys of the Chuzrowski children were spread out across the floor. In a moment of panic, the worker quickly ran down the stairs and out of the Chuzrowski home. It began from a simple act of kindness and ended in the tragic deaths of 4 beloved children. But is this the end of the story? Are there ghosts in this quiet log home on the site of the Champlain Trail Museum? Do the children of the Chuzrowski family still visit there today? No one knows for sure, but if you listen closely, perhaps you too will hear the voices of the Chuzrowski children playing there still.